Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so if you're wondering what happened to the pumpkins, as you can see they were carved this week for Halloween. So we've got like a rabbity type one there, and then we've got one that's based on the Jack out of the Nightmare at Christmas, and then there's another smiley one there that was used to decorate our house during Halloween. Okay, so I just want to talk about some seeds that I've managed to pick up. Now, at this time of year, you can pick up seeds from garden centres for about 50p a packet. What they do is, at the end of the season, any of the stock that's left over, typically they'll put them in a bucket or sort of on display in a different part of the garden centre. And what they'll do is they'll sell them off much cheaper. I mean, I got these today for 50p a packet, so there's £7 there. Now, if I'd have bought these normally, you know, they're kind of £3.69, £2.29, £3 a packet. So there's probably about £30 worth there, easily £30 worth. But I've picked these up for £7 today. And if you go on Allotment and obviously you're growing lots of things, it's well worthwhile you're doing this. It always happens at kind of this time of the year. In fact, probably this is the last time you can do it really. Sort of around now, because they'll start to clear them out altogether. But if you haven't got, if you know what you want to grow next year, and there's a garden centre nearby you, it's worthwhile calling in at this time of the year to see what offers they've got on the seeds, because you can pick them up quite cheaply. So I just want to quickly explain the seeds that I've picked up today and what I'll be growing next year, or this is part of what I'll be growing next year, so you've got an idea of what will be coming up in 2018. So, first one of these Bedfordshire Champion onions. Now this is from Mr. Fothergill. Now, I have grown onions from seed before in the past. The benefit from growing onions from seed is that they won't bolt. Now this year, if you remember, and last year, I had a few seeds onions that ran to seed. Now, onions are by nature biannual, so what they'll do is they'll grow a small tuber 1 year, a small bulb 1 year, and then the next year they'll grow to a larger bulb and then potentially run to seed. If you can get them in the first year, they are highly unlikely to bolt or to run to seed. So by growing onions from seed, you almost make it impossible for the onion to run to seed, unless the weather conditions are really extreme. So next year I am going to grow some onions from sets, the normal sets like I normally do. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow some onions from seed just to see how I get on. So I've not done this for a few years, but in here there's 350 seeds. So I thought I'd give it a go. For the cost of 50p, I'm not really going to lose anything by doing it. So I'll be growing these next season, and basically all you need to do is sow them quite early on, January, February, March, April time, and then you plant them out in May, and then basically you harvest them sort of August, September, exactly like a normal set. So I'll give these a go. Obviously watch next year and you'll see these growing, but that's one thing that I've not done before on the videos. The second thing, turnips. I didn't have a lot of success with turnips this year. Now turnips are the type of vegetable, you don't really need many of them, but they're really nice in stews and stuff like that on Sunday lunches and stuff. So what I've done is I've picked up a couple of varieties here. This one's from Mr. Fothergill, and it's Purple Top Melon. I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. I've grown these before, you've seen these before on videos. These are a nice little turnip. Now what you need to do with these, if you're growing these, is pick them early. Don't let them get too big. You want them to be kind of about that size, about 3 inches across, no bigger than that. And then, you know, sort of pick them early, and they're quite nice and sweet. The next one is this one, which is golden ball turnip. I've not grown these before. I've grown one that is yellow before, but I don't think it was this one that I grew. This is from Thompson and Morgan. So those are the turnips I'll be growing next year. I'll probably grow half a row of each of these. There's two ways to grow turnips. You can either grow them straight in the ground, put the seed straight in the ground in a drill, or what you can do is you can grow them in modules, you know, sort of small pots, if you like, you know, trays of pots, and then you can plant them out into the garden later. I would advise you plant them in modules. The reason being is I suffer from a small weevil beetle which goes through and eats the leaves of the younger plant. Now if you grow them in modules inside the greenhouse until the leaves get about sort of 2 or 3 inches high, then you are considerably less likely to get this weevil beetle eating the leaves from them. So that's a good tip for growing turnips if you wish to grow them. But it's always nice to have a few of these growing on the allotment, because they supplement sort of quite a few meals, stews and soups and things like that. They're ideal for, and most certainly I like them chopped up and mashed. I think they're really nice for that as well. Now broccoli, I have just cornered the market in broccoli. What I have done, you will see one theme here. They're all F1 hybrids. Now I've got a few different varieties here. Now for me, broccoli is a real cash crop. It's one vegetable that all of my family will eat, and it's easy to grow on my allotment. So my ground suits broccoli quite well. This year I had a really good success rate with an F1 hybrid variety that I grew earlier in the year, and the second variety that I grew, which is an autumn variety, not F1, was a complete failure, if I'm being brutally honest with you. Well, it wasn't a complete failure. I have been able to crop from it, but it was nowhere near as successful as the F1 hybrid. So what I've got here is a number of varieties. So the first variety, and I've got a couple of packets of each, because these seeds are good until 2020. I don't know if you can see that on there. So these will last me for a good couple of years. So I typically grow about around 50 plants at a time, and next year I'm planning to grow a succession 3 separate crops. So basically you grow them in a tray, you prick them out, plant them up into pots, and then after they get to about sort of 6 inches high, you plant them out into the ground, and then within 12 weeks from planting the seeds, they should crop the rosettes that you eat. As soon as you've cropped it, obviously you can take all them out, feed them to chickens, then you can put another batch into the ground, and then so that you could potentially do that 3 times in a year. If you get an early enough crop in, and then have a main crop in the middle in the summer, and then you can do it again and have a late crop in the winter, then you should be able to get 3 crops. And so one variety that I've got is Mr. Fothergill, this one, which is just called broccoli green. And you'll see that it's Calabrese Salmon F1. This is the variety that I grew this year. So I've got a couple of those. Salmon F1 grew really well for me this year. This one comes highly recommended from me. So I've got a couple of packets of those, and I thoroughly intend to grow these. Obviously you only get 50 seeds in a packet. F1 hybrids, you typically only get a few seeds in the packet, so it might be worthwhile you getting a couple of packets. The one other note that I made earlier this year, and it's worth saying again, with F1 hybrids, all of the plants will be identical. So if you plant them all at the same time and then plant them out all at the same time, they are highly likely, it's almost a certainty that these will all crop at the same time. So what I do is you typically get a couple of plants that are a week early or so, and then a couple of plants that possibly are slightly later, but most certainly if you grow 50, I would say 45 of the plants will most certainly crop at the same time. What you need to do in that instance is do what I do, basically crop them all at the same time, chop them all up into the small pieces, like as you eat it, and then all you need to do is you can either blanch it and freeze it, or just basically bag it up and freeze it as it is. But they'll store in the freezer quite nicely, and then obviously when you need it, all you need to do is take it out, put it in the saucepan, boil it up, and then you've got your broccoli for your meal. Out of 50 plants, you'll most certainly get meals enough for potentially 100 people. You know, 100 meals if you like. So obviously grow what you need. Don't go mad and grow loads of these unless you're going to eat them. Now, because I've got 5 in my family, you know, one of these, you know, sort of 50 plants will do pretty much, I'd say 40 meals. So you know, there's going to be more than enough there for broccoli. However, I've got another few varieties here. Now this one, Calabrese Fiesta F1, I have grown this one in the past. It's not quite as good as this one, but again it's an F1 hybrid and it's quite good. I've not grown this for a few years, so I thought I'd grow it again. This one tends to be a little bit more leafy and slightly shorter than the Samsung one, but again it's a good variety, and I'll see how I go with the first batch of these, and then what I possibly might do is grow some of these as a second batch. Obviously I've got 50 seeds there, so that's going to do 2 batches if you like, and I'll probably grow a few more than 50, so I've got some spares, so that might do 1, 2 or possibly 1.5 batches. So obviously I'll do the other batches with this. So that's the second variety. That comes from Thompson and Morgan. Okay, then the third variety is this autumn Beaumont, I guess you pronounce that, F1, another F1 hybrid variety. Now there are again 50 seeds in here. Because this is an autumn variety, I'm guessing that this one would be a good one to grow for the last, you know, the last succession of broccoli. And I don't believe I've grown this one before, but I thought it was worth giving this a go. And as a wild card, I've also bought these as well, which is Iron Man F1. Now this, judging from the dates of when you can plant it to when you can harvest it, this is saying you can plant right up until the end of June, and you can crop this right up until the end of November. So this again, I would potentially have this as the last, you know, the last crop, if you like, of the year. So the logic is those 2 would be the last one, that one, those 2 would potentially be the middle one, and these ones would be the first succession. So I'd grow them first, then those, and then probably a combination of those. So those are the broccoli. I know I've gone on a bit with those, but again with the broccoli, all you need to do is plant them out into a seed tray, wait till they've grown to about 1.5 inches high, prick them out into pots, pots about that big is the way I do it. Have them growing on in your greenhouse till they get to around 6 inches high, and then plant them out around a foot to 18 inches apart, which is more than enough room. They don't grow massively big, and then you know, you can be cropping these within 12 weeks of planting them, is the experience I've got. So that's the broccoli. Right, moving on, we've got a few more seeds here. So the pumpkins, this is the Atlantic Giant. This is the one that I always grow, and these are the large pumpkins that I grow. You can't go wrong with these really. If you can't get these to grow, you know, you basically throw the seed on the ground of these and they'll grow. But what I do is I grow them in pots again like this, put them about 1 inch or 1.5 inches down into the compost. Wait till they've sort of grown to a, you know, sort of reasonably small plant, and then you can plant those out. Put plenty of manure, compost underneath them, and make sure they're well watered. You know, there's plenty of good organic material in the ground to keep the ground moist. Water is the key to growing good sized pumpkins, and then you'll get a you know, some good pumpkins off those. Moving on to tomatoes, Alicante is one of the 2 that I grow. Alicante didn't do that well in the greenhouse this year, I must admit. The Moneymaker did considerably better, so I will most certainly be growing less Alicante next year, unless I grow tomatoes in the second greenhouse on the plot. But again, they are a nice tomato. They are actually derived from Moneymaker. Moneymaker is a very old variety of tomato. It's been about most certainly probably the thick end of 80 years, if not. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than that. Alicante's been bred from, so it's a cross of Moneymaker and others. So it is very similar to Moneymaker. Some say it's a bit more flavoursome, but to be honest with you, if you want my honest opinion, I don't think there's much between them at all. Last year, Moneymaker and Alicante were pretty much neck and neck. You know, from a crop point of view, how many tomatoes I was getting off the plants. This year, the Moneymaker most certainly did better. But I think it's worth growing a couple of varieties in your greenhouse, because this year Moneymaker's done really well, Alicante's not done so well. Next year it might be the opposite way around, where the Alicante do really well, Moneymaker doesn't do so well. So it's always worthwhile doing a couple, then you edge your bets to get a good crop. But I'd say from the Alicantes I think it was 9 or 10 plants in the greenhouse of Alicante, and I probably got somewhere in the region of probably about 10 to 15 kilos of tomatoes. The Moneymaker, I had 14 plants of Moneymaker in the greenhouse, and I got something like 40 kilos of tomatoes, which puts it into perspective for you. So, you know, the Moneymaker were most certainly cropping probably about two times more fruit, possibly even more, than the Alicante this year. But anyway, that's the Alicante we grow next year. Okay, last few. In the new, sorry, not in the new greenhouse, but in the more shaded greenhouse, I've found that peppers grow really well in there, and also cucumbers. So that's where I'm likely to grow them next year. A couple of varieties here. This is a sweet pepper called Mohawk F1. You don't get many seeds for your money here. There's only 8 seeds in there, so hopefully I'll get a reasonably good germination rate. But that's one sweet pepper I'll be growing next year. Secondly, there's these, well, it's just called pepper sweet bonnet. So I'm assuming that these are not too hot. I'm hoping they're not the Scotch bonnet. They'll still get eaten anyway. But anyway, those are some more peppers that I'll be growing. They're from Thompson. Both of those are from Thompson and Morgan. This one's an F1, so they should all be pretty much the same. This one's not an F1 hybrid, but you get quite a few more seeds in here. You get 15 seeds in there, so but I'm guessing that's a smaller plant. This one looks like it's a larger plant, like the ones I've got growing at the moment. But those are the peppers I'll be growing next year. And some sweet peas. These are some pinks called Lipstick. I'll just grab these. There's only 20 seeds in there. Yeah, 20 seeds in there. But for 50p, I think, you know, you can't go wrong really. So those are some seeds that I've recently purchased to go into the allotment for next year. Okay, quick look around the greenhouse. Now, there aren't many people that can boast they've got ripening tomatoes in November, but this year we've done really well. These are obviously the few Moneymakers that are left. As you can see, I've still got fruit ripening on the plant, so you know, I'm quite pleased with the amounts. Now, in total I've had probably I can't remember now. It's over 50 kilos of tomatoes out of this greenhouse this year, so I have had a pretty good year, to be honest with you. As I say, the Alicante didn't do brilliantly, but these Moneymakers have just kept on and on and on fruiting. So you know, you can't really grumble that in November you've got fresh tomatoes out the greenhouse. But really, these really are getting to the end now. Obviously, the weather's cooling down. The days are getting shorter, so these plants really are, and as you can see, these plants are really dying back now. This one's obviously gone, so I need to take these tomatoes off. These plants really are dying down now. So what I'm going to do in the next week or so is clear out the rest of these tomatoes, and what I'm going to be doing is sort of clearing out the ground. Now, what I do need to do, because I've had some blight in the greenhouse this year, what I do need to do is clean all the greenhouse, so empty it out completely, get all the plants and everything out of here, scrub all the roof and the walls down, get them nice and clean inside. Jay's fluid is quite a smelly job really, but Jay's fluid's really good for cleaning all the sort of the greenhouse out. So that's something I'm going to be doing inside and out to make sure that everything's nice and clean. And then what I'm going to be doing is taking off probably about the top 6 inches or so of soil, and I'm going to be putting that on the garden, not the allotment. I'm going to be putting it on my garden. The reason being is if there is any blight spores in the ground, what I don't want to be doing is putting that onto the vegetable plot, where that can potentially come into contact with potatoes, for example. Obviously potatoes can also suffer with the same blight spores. So what I want to do is take the top layer of soil off, obviously making sure that I sort of skim the top, get the top 6 inches or so off. I'll barrow that down to the garden and get rid of it, and then I can put some fresh soil in the greenhouse ready for next year. But whilst I'm doing that, before I take the soil off, what I want to do is obviously clean all the glass, get it all sort of cleaned out. All of the bamboo canes need to be sort of washed and wiped down, make sure that there's nothing on there, or get rid of the bamboo canes and get new ones. Obviously that's another option, but I'm going to be sort of cleaning these down, making sure it's all nice and clean, and then hopefully I shouldn't get any blight next year. Okay, moving on. We've still got a few grapes left on the vine. I really do need to pick these. As you can see, they're falling off as I touch them, but there's a few left on there. There's also a couple of little bunches up here which I'm going to be taking off. Obviously the leaves are all died back now on the grapevine. Now when I clean the greenhouse out, what I am going to be doing is trimming the vine down. So all of these sort of long shoots here, I'm going to be cutting them back, sort of trimming them back, and then that'll sort of hopefully bring a bit more light into the greenhouse. Now the vines did grow quite a lot this year, so the other thing I need to do is where they're tied up like here, because this stalk has now expanded obviously as it got bigger, the string is now quite taut. So what I also need to do is just go along, whilst there's no leaves and I can see where the stalks are and stuff, what I need to do is go along and then cut any string, any of these strings that are tight, and then just relax it out a little bit, potentially put another tie in there, just to hold it in place. But what I don't want to do is leave that like that, because this time next year that will most certainly have cut into the vine, and obviously as soon as the vine's damaged it's not going to recover particularly well. So there's a tight one there. I've also noticed there's a tight one here, and there's also a tight one there. I need to cut that off, and then there's also one here as well, and I've also noticed one along here which is a little bit tight. So what I want to do is cut the string off, put some new string on which is a bit bit slacker. Obviously you still need to hold the grapevine up in the greenhouse, but all of this kind of dead wood and anything that's not not desired, like this one here, I don't know if you can see, but this one I'm touching here, this most certainly needs to come out as well, just to lighten it up, get more air flowing through, and so the vine can get a good start next year. So any sort of stems or anything like that, I'll be trimming down, but I'll do a quick video on that whilst I do it. But that's the grapevine for you. Okay, this fuchsia here is looking a bit sad for itself. That's because I haven't watered it for a week or so. I've just given it a little bit of water. So rather than this being frost, we have had a frost this week, but rather than this being frost, this is actually down to me not watering it. But I'm trying to get the plant to shut down. As soon as all the leaves have come off that, I'll cut that back, sort of cut it back so it's more bushy, and then I'll put that in the other greenhouse where it's going to be more protected. The Dom Pedro planter, as you can see, it's really sort of gone down to the culm now. There's actually a branch come off there. I don't know if you can see, the branch is actually down there. That's actually come off. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know if a bird or a cat's got in here, but that's come off. So the rest of them, really, what I'm going to do, as you can see, they quite easily break off. Now what you can do is you can either leave that in the pot, put it somewhere frost free, and then that will grow again next year, or what you can do is like a dahlia, you can uproot it, turn it upside down and dry, get all the soil off and dry it that way. But all I'm going to do is, I've not watered this now for quite a few weeks. It's been in the greenhouse where it's dry, so what I'm going to do is just leave that in its pot. What I will do next spring is sort of take it out the pot, scratch a bit of the ground off, the earth off from round the the corm and then put some fresh compost around it just to give it a boost next year. But at the moment all I'm going to do is put that in the other greenhouse, and then that can overwinter in there. It's not going to be absolutely frost free, but that's the best I can offer it at the moment. It won't get too cold in there because it just holds the heat in there. But anyway, that's the Don Pedro planter. The beans are drying out quite nicely now. These runner beans really have dried out now, so I can now split those open like I showed you in the previous video. Put those in a bucket and then just let them dry out for another couple of days. Then I can put them into either an envelope or a brown paper bag, ready for next year, so they can come out very shortly as well. The climbing beans, as you can see, they've dried out quite nicely. There's some there and there's also some over here. So they're quite dry now. They're not quite as ready as the runner beans, but they're effectively ready to be shelled and got out. But it actually looks like, I don't know if you can see this bit here, but it looks like someone's been nibbling at that. So I don't know if I've had a mouse in the greenhouse. But anyway, they need to be sort of shelled and sort of bagged up or into an envelope as well. The cucumber plants really have finished now, so I'll be taking those out, obviously along with all of these sort of canes in the roof as well. So they'll be coming out very shortly. The compost that's in the tubs there won't go to waste. That'll be reused again. But I'll use that where I know there's going to be no potatoes or tomatoes, because we've had a little bit of blight in here, and again I need to consider that to be potentially infected with spores as well. So that's the cucumber. So that's pretty much what the greenhouse looks like. We're in the second week in November now, so that's to say that we've got tomatoes, and I'll keep coming back to this, but to say we've got tomatoes in November still on the plant, I think we're doing really well this year. I think we've had a very mild year, and I don't remember ever having fresh tomatoes in the greenhouse at this time of year before now. So, I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Normal Garden.